Tedros, yeah. Did you see him run?
Yeah, so you're one of the first people. So you've confronted Tedros, John Kerry, Albert Bourla. These are people that when they're in a room with journalists, they're used to everything being choreographed and only getting softball questions. So you're the only person that's actually confronted these people and asked them very questions that at best would have made them feel
Like, they're not even hard questions. They're like really simple questions. Super simple. They're just the questions that the majority of people in the normal world who live outside of their little bubble, control bubble or whatever you want to call it. I do get the sense that half these people have never heard those questions. That's how much they're entrenched in their own. That's why they're shocked.
What's the carbon footprint of these events every single year that you come here? Peasants pay for your crimes?
That's a stupid question.
Is it?
And just that response made the headlines, which essentially shows the world what a hypocrite he is.
BlackRock, for example, they sent out a woman. She's saying, "Watch yourself." She told
Me neither. Thanks for caring so much about me. I feel like BlackRock really cares.
Watch yourself. Watch yourself.
You know, there was a CNBC guy.
Go away. Seriously, take your phone cover.
Don't touch the mic.
I don't know, but this guy's going to get punched out.
I just got threatened by the head of news and programming of CNBC.
Let me go on to the ADL.
How you doing, Jonathan? Are you like the boy who cried wolf?
Are you?
For some, apologize to Elon. It's not that hard to say sorry. When you
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We live in a so-called information age, an age where most so-called journalists are really just corporate-owned, bought and paid for political hacks who just read from scripts and teleprompters. My next guest this evening is actually part of an endangered species. Believe it or not, he happens to be a real journalist, someone who is unafraid to speak truth to power. Now, in his career as a real journalist, he has confronted some of the most powerful people on this planet. And as a result of his groundbreaking journalism, he is arguably one of the most demonized and censored people in the world, most certainly in Australia, without a doubt. Now, he recently came back from a trip to Davos, where he confronted members of the world's global elite at the World Economic Forum. And he has come on our podcast tonight to discuss his recent reporting there. And ironically, the theme of Davos is rebuilding trust. Avi Yemini, welcome to tonight's podcast.
Thanks for having me, mate.
It's an honor and a pleasure to have you on.
It's all my pleasure and all my honor.
In the spirit of rebuilding trust, so you've been asking people gotcha questions. So I want to turn the table and ask you some gotcha questions. And in the theme of rebuilding trust, in the interest of full transparency, how did you get to Davos, and do you have a private jet?
Yes.
Who owns it? Rebel News?
Rebel News. It's a private jet. It's where we've been funneling all the money from the. You know what? I'm so tired of traveling because believe it or not, I fly economy everywhere, and in my older age, when you travel that much, you tend to fail at rocking up to the gym as much as you should because your schedule's all out of whack. And so let's just say I'm getting I don't know the political correct way of describing. I'm getting fat. So it's not only am I short, I'm also fat, and I'm in these the short probably helps in economy, but the width and it's like the chairs in economy are getting smaller. I think they blame that on going green to ensure that they can get as many people overseas on the one plane, pack it out on the least amount of the smallest carbon footprint. They just happen to make a lot more money on the way, which generally is the theme. That's the trend, is us plebs suffer while the fat cats get fatter.
What's with that blatant hypocrisy in Davos? Why is it so in your face? I mean, when you got there last year, I remember you showed the private airport where all their private jets were. I mean, it's so in your face.
We're here at the private airport for the Davos WEF annual conference, and as you can see behind us, thank goodness Australia has a new climate crusading Prime Minister who only sent the delegation on one private jet.
Went this year as well, and this year we learned 150. Think about this: 150 private jets a day land in Davos for the World Economic Forum. 150 a day. To put that into perspective, I think they get 5 to 10 a week normally.
Wow.
The airport says that the World Economic Forum essentially pays for the operations of the airport. It's insane.
By far for this little airstrip, and you see massive jets that you wouldn't normally see. It's so busy, it's such an important part of their business that the website of the airport has its own special menu bar just for the World Economic Forum. You could read it yourself. They make hundreds of thousands of dollars from the fees of these planes landing and getting fueled and staying in hangars.
And these are the people that are all going there, and every second word that comes out of their mouth is sustainability, climate change, going green. And you'd think after this is the third time I've been there, some of the elites there are starting to recognize me. But you would think that they would at least think through what they're doing, at least come up with some sort of. I guess Kevin Rudd came up with some sort of response. I was kicking myself after because I forgot to. I should have asked him about Trump, about being the ambassador when Trump, how it's going to feel to be the ambassador with Trump. But anyways, but his answer.
That would have been an interesting question to ask, actually.
I did ask him what he. I got to be honest, like Kevin Rudd, out of most of the elitists and the people that he actually engaged.
I noticed that too.
And he was.
I was going to ask you about that.
He's quite disarming in the fact that I would have never expected Kevin Rudd to be somebody who's kind of charming in real life.
Because he's known to have a really short temper.
Yeah,
he's got a reputation.
So I go in Davos, like I walk in. If you look at all my things, like I'm generally, unless I've got it does depend which direction they're going. So whether I think I have a really short time or I have some time. But I try to come in gently and nicely and smiley, and then they blow up when they realize, like when you ask a question they don't like. But he kind of handled like the questions when it came to what about the hypocrisy, and his answer, whilst I think is still ridiculous, like he kind of answers it saying his excuse is, well, if the net. The reason why I think it's ridiculous is because I don't think it's true, and secondly, I don't think you can gauge that. But he goes, if the net outcome is greater than the cost, then it's arguably worth it. So if the 150 jets a day for the it works out to 5 days or so like that. So if all those jets plus building a fake town for the 5 days, plus everything that all the resources they take up there, huge carbon footprint. If the outcome means that the world drops its carbon footprint by at least more than that cost, he says it's worth it. I don't know how you gauge it, because I highly doubt that that's even true, that they are that from that event you're minimizing the world's kind of carbon footprint. And it was funny because I saw Indian. I don't think we put that out yet. Some Indian minister There's still a few to
Is
come.
that the same guy that you spoke to last year?
No. Some there's about 1 million of them. Half of India's there. But I said to him, like, what about India? Your carbon footprint? And his response was, actually, per capita, we are one of the smallest polluters in the world. So like everyone has a great excuse.
I mean, it's ironic from people that are, and an organization is promoting net zero, which is essentially, turning people in the best case scenario back into the Stone Age. So it's quite ironic. And
look, it makes sense these days because the same groups that are pushing this rubbish are also supporting Hamas, which are already back in the Stone Age. So at least they're consistent.
That's a good point. Well, you got Greta Thunberg, who came out and
exactly,
and even Tedros is tweeting in support of Hamas.
Yeah. Tedros, yeah. Did you see him run?
Yeah. So you confronted. You were one of the first people. So you've confronted Tedros, John Kerry, Albert Bourla. These are people that when they're in the room with journalists, they're used to everything being choreographed and only getting softball questions. So you're the only person that's actually confronted these people and asked them very questions that at best would have made them feel awkward. And
well, I think they're not even hard questions. They're like really simple questions, super simple. They're just the questions that the majority of people in the normal world who live outside of their little bubble, control bubble or whatever you want to call it. That's the question that people, and like I do get the sense that half these people have never heard those questions. That's how much they're entrenched in their own. That's why they're shocked when we approach them on the streets of Davos. Like when you first walk up to them, if they don't know who you are, they actually give you a second because they think if you're there, you're probably in the club.
One of the paid media.
Yeah, and if you're in the club, then you're going to be cool. Sorry, there you go. See,
that's all right.
They're out to get us. That's...
Exactly right. And so with I noticed that particularly because you're asking them questions. I think you're the first person in the world that's actually asked Bourla and Tedros about excess deaths. No one has ever asked them that.
No.
And with John Kerry, I noticed that with some of these people, their default position seems to be either passive-aggressive behavior at best or even violence in the worst-case scenario. I noticed that John Kerry's minder was getting very hands-on.
Why can't I ask him questions? Who are you? Why are you trying to bully me out of us?
So please.
That doesn't. A lot of people say no to a lot of the policies and agendas he pushes. They don't get a choice, so why can't we ask him a question in a public space? Can you not touch me?
And what the camera didn't cut, like you kept seeing that woman, and then like they kind of pushed me to the back, and this guy. But I walked off. I could have, in the moment you make a, you got to make a decision. Do I continue or? But I figured, and it was probably the correct call because in that moment where he called that a stupid question, that became like the #1 headline in America. And it was all because what was the question? The question was, the question was essentially, do us peasants have to? Because you come here every year. He literally has been there every single year, and he is one of the biggest climate alarmists in the world.
That's right.
So you are essentially committing the crimes that you label them crimes. So you're committing the crimes and you want us peasants around the world to pay for your crime because you've deemed it a crime. And he's like, oh, that's a stupid question. And he, I think I just got under his skin.
What's the carbon footprint of these events every single year that you come here? You think it's worth it? Peasants pay for your crimes?
That's a stupid question.
Is it really? Is it more stupid than you traveling here to tell us? Please don't. Sorry?
We're done. We are done now.
Don't grab me. You can't grab us. This is a free society, mate. We have freedom of the press. Why do you think you're more important? Your carbon footprint doesn't matter, but everybody else around the world
Suggested that. Nobody ever suggested that. Don't make up stupid questions.
And just that response made the headlines, which essentially shows the world what a hypocrite he is, like, and what he really thinks and what they really think about the average person.
And he's got an interesting title, Climate Czar. I think that, the title Czar next to climate's quite interesting, telling what the peasants, the plebs, how they should live their lives.
Yeah.
And another person you've spoken to, I wouldn't say confronted, you actually had a civil conversation with him, was Will.i.am.
Yeah, he was a gentleman.
He's an interesting guy. He says he believes in free speech, but why? My question is, why should we believe him? Because this is a guy that flew. This was over a decade ago. He attracted some notoriety and flack for that. He flew to a climate change conference in his own private helicopter. So when he says that he believes in free speech and he's a member of the World Economic Forum, why should we believe him? Should we take him for his word?
Look, I'll be honest, when I approached him, this is just this was my personal experience in that, and I guess everyone can view the video. I certainly don't agree with some of his positions. I think that when you watch it, he kind of got into this mental gymnastics trying to figure out what he believes and what he says, and how it actually plays. But when I approached him, I thought he was going to, and he certainly, the staff were around. They were trying to push us away, and he actually had an interview with CNBC about 2 minutes later, but he was super humble and he wanted to talk to us, so he fobbed them off, and he stopped. And you don't really capture it in the thing because it's kind of happening as we're going, and so his minders were like whispering in my ear, and they're like, "Oh, he has they're like, so at first they were trying to stop me from talking to him. He stopped and engaged, and then his minders realized he wasn't listening to them, so they were like, okay. So then they were nice to me, and they were telling me in my ear, just walk and talk. And I was like, mate, piss off, you just tried to stop it. And I knew that we had him, he was talking to us. If I walk to where he goes, as soon as you get to the door, he's just going to walk in.
He's gone.
So I just ignored them. And so that's just kind of the background of it. And then on top of that, look, I think my take on him, just from that 10 minutes or whatever, is he's genuine, but like most humans, he's a hypocrite. And you can see it unfold as he talks to me, I think. He believes in free speech, but then, also believes that, you can't hurt someone's feeling, but then do we draw the line? So you kind of see it play out in his head. It's almost like he hasn't thought those through. Like, he believes in censorship, but doesn't. He believes in self-censorship. That's the way he kind of moved on. So self-censorship. Okay, but should you be punished for your... Yeah, but why would you want to be like it? No, that's not the question. The question is, if somebody does cross that line that you deem as hateful, should we cancel them? But overall, so when you ask, I guess, back to your question, he was a hypocrite when it came to climate change. He's no different than all of them in that sense. The difference between Will.i.am, I believe, again, from my short engagement with him, and I found him to be like a mensch, like a good, he can have wrong ideas, but he's not. He doesn't think he's better than us, as in he doesn't have to talk to us. He doesn't like. I think he comes from a good place. I think he's being used, because he is a big name. He is well loved around the world, and I think he goes into it thinking he can do some good for the world, and they're looking and they're going, "Oh, look at this Schmendrick. We're going to use him as kind of a marketing ploy." And so I think some of the ideas that he pushes, he hasn't clearly thought through. And the example you give is just another example. I haven't followed his life that closely to know, but I'm sure there's plenty of those. But we all have those, like we all believe things, and and then we have, sometimes our actions are hypocritical. The question is, one, do we think we're better than everyone else than to admit it? And two, do we think we have to impose that limit on everyone else while we can behave in that other way?
And I noticed he didn't answer. It probably wasn't deliberate. I think he misunderstood Ezra's question. Ezra's question at the end was, should the government be the arbiters of truth?
Yeah.
And Ezra inserted, well, should we trust ourselves? And I think he misinterpreted, and so that's why he didn't.
No, yeah, but then at the end, like the way he answered it. So then, like, that's why I kind of cut it. Like, I go, so you are saying we should trust ourselves? And then he looked at me and he goes, what? Don't you trust yourself? I'm like, dude, I trust myself. I don't trust the government. That was the point of this whole conversation. But overall, I don't think he's the enemy. I think he's just being used. I think the enemy are the Klaus Schwabs, the Bill Gates, the ones that are using. And I feel like people can have different opinions, and people can even. You got to understand, like, people go to the World Economic Forum. Not everyone that goes to the World Economic Forum is evil. That's the thing. Like, when you go to the World Economic Forum, I'd say that the evil ones are at the top, and it's your top 5 to 10%. And it's, the rest of them are either opportunistic. Like, you won't even believe it. How many people, as they're walking in, go, Avi, good on you, man. Shaking my hand.
Really? Wow.
Straight up. So, and some of them will stop for a minute and go, hey, I'm only here because for me, it's a networking. Like, when do you get access to this much? Just like why Avi's here, except they get an invite thing because the World Economic Forum feels like they can get something out of this guy. And also, you got to remember, like, the World Economic Forum, the institution is also playing this kind of, especially in the last couple of years, they're fighting this PR war because, I don't know who, but a few people have destroyed their reputation, and so they're trying to look like they're fair and balanced. So they are intentionally inviting, like they invited Trump, they invited the Argentinian president. They do invite, like, here people that are essentially going to condemn them. But it's all very controlled in the fact that they knew exactly what the Argentinian president was going to do, and they do this kind of PR weighing of, like, is it going to have a overall better thing for us to be able to have somebody that disagrees with us and say, no, what are you talking about? We have all voices. This is not just one cabal. And really, the thing is, that's part of their plan and their PR in the last few years, especially.
It's all one big show. And I remember when Trump criticized the World Economic Forum, I believe that was his last year in office when he openly criticized them. And then Soros was at the same forum, and he said that Trump was a threat, the greatest threat to world peace. Well, I'm just paraphrasing what he said. Before I get to the really juicy bit with your interaction with the head of the ADL, another person that you had a really civil conversation with, almost like a bromance, I notice, is Mark Carney. And this is a guy, a very powerful man. He was the governor of the Reserve Bank of England, the governor of the Reserve Bank of Canada. I believe he's tipped to be the next Liberal leader of the mainstream Canadian party after Trudeau, possibly the next Prime Minister of Canada. And he said something interesting. I know you met him last year and you had a civil conversation, but he tried to fob you off. This year it was more, he wasn't trying to get away from you. He was more willing to engage. Maybe that's because he's trying to enter politics. There could be a motive there. But you asked him some interesting questions. He gave you some interesting answers in relation to David Menzies and how he was treated.
Yeah. So listen, so Mark Carney, I've met him on all three events, all three World Economic Forum. In fact, what you don't see in what they publish was when I walked up to Mark, and he turned to me, like I essentially walked up to him, going, Mark, and I tap him on the back, and he's gone, Avi, how you doing? And he was really warm, and I go, let's do our annual walk and talk. and Ezra kind of came around and joined in, which was perfect because Ezra, Ezra was discussing with him more Canadian type politics. So this is my take. Mark Carney, firstly, I think even the first years, he tried to fob me off the first year a little bit, but he still engaged as we walked. And he did answer as we walked until he had to get into his thing. And then the next year it was, I think the first year I asked him because he was looking for food as well. And I said, "Oh, you're looking for the bug sandwich?" Like,
yeah, I remember that.
He's always been good banter. He's a really charismatic guy. His politics are, I think some of it's center left, some of it is extreme left. And he's so politically, we certainly don't align. But having said that, I think the world needs more liberals like him. I think he's he's more of a classical. Like if you look at him compared to Justin Trudeau, because he's likely going to take over Justin Trudeau as leader of the Liberal Party in Canada. So I can guarantee you, in the moment when I walked up to him, he did a calculation in his head, because you've got to remember also, Rebel News in Canada has a certain connotation. Australia, Rebel News has one because it's me. So whatever you feel about me. But in Canada, it's, they've been going for 7, 8 years now, I think. And, they've broken all kinds of stuff, but, and they've had all these different personalities that ended up, you got to think of your Gavin McGuinness as your Southern Lauren Southern. There's a heap of them that are far more controversial in Canadian stuff. And so even when Ezra walked in, so he knows who both of us. So there's a calculation. He is a political machine. He is, we know, everybody knows, it's not really a secret that he's up against the same woman who had Menzies arrested for that top spot. He did a calculation in his head. There's two ways you can go about dealing with us in that moment. Rebel News, you can condemn us to our face and become maybe, I guess, a hero to the left. So you could become a hero to the left by condemning us. That's what Trudeau has always opted for. Is, even when he's tried to ban Rebel News from press conferences, whatever, Parliament, whatever it was, there's a bunch of things. We went to court, we beat him. We had, he was forced to have to stand there and listen to a Rebel News question. And then he used that moment to condemn Rebel News. So he could have done that, but he chose not to. In fact, he chose to answer the questions. And not only that, he answers the questions as much as whether you like his answers or not. And I think specifically with Menzies, his answers were on point. Good on him. He did something that no Liberal member has done anywhere. He condemned that action. Now, you could say that he has an incentive. It's kind of an underhanded way of condemning her. But he did it. Doesn't matter what.
This was Canada. You could have him arrested.
Did you see that? Your rival, Christian Freeland, had one of our reporters arrested.
I don't think she did. I think
she didn't say a word against it.
If the police tried to arrest me,
it was the wrong thing. It was absolutely the wrong thing.
Well, thank you for saying that.
Look, freedom of the press. I've been a public figure in Canada. I've been a public figure in the UK. I know you got to answer tough questions, and you guys, you ask tough questions, and that's fair.
And he placed his bet, and he decided the way I'm going to engage, the way I'm going to deal with this is engage with these people. And then he ended it by essentially complimenting our work, like saying, you're asking real tough questions, so of course we should engage. And I think it's important, like, I don't know what's going to happen in Canada, right? This guy can likely be the Prime Minister, and Pierre Poilievre on the other side will be the opposition, or the other way around. But you're going to turn from a time, you've got to remember, where Rebel News was blacklisted from both the Prime Minister and the opposition until recently, to a time where we're going to be able to ask tough questions to both sides. And that's Canada, but, hopefully one day we can apply that here too. I think there are more conservative MPs that are willing to engage with, at the which was the I guess right-wing World Economic Forum, just far less powerful or rich. I interviewed a bunch of liberal senators and MPs, so I think it is changing here as well. But Carney, yeah, his politics I certainly don't agree with. He is everything I stand against, but his way of engaging in politics, I think he's good. I think we need that. I have no problem with the left existing. I have with the way that they behave. And Mark Carney will allow you to ask tough questions, even if you're not approved media. And to me, I think as an alternative journalist, that's what I want. I want more of that. And, you know, and that kind of also answers those people, you know, the critics that sit there and go, oh, you're only going to pick fights. Well, I'm forced to pick fights with people who don't want to answer anything. But even Kevin Rudd also disarmed me in the fact that he engaged. Look, I don't know, Kevin Rudd, you probably got to get him on a mood. Whereas Mark Carney, I feel, and Mark Carney, the first time didn't know me, the second time knew me, still engaged in us, and the third time was really good. So I really hope for Canada's sake that he does win the opposition thing, because I think even as he becomes a Liberal minister, because then at least I think if you have him in opposition and the Conservatives in power, they'll get somewhere in life. Like I don't think it's gonna. Canada's been crashing for a while, from Trudeau and a failure of an opposition that could really take him on. And I think recently the opposition has been stepping up a little bit. And if Trudeau is gone and somebody like Mark Carney takes a position, that even if the Conservatives lose, I think Mark Carney is a lot better than Trudeau.
Right, the lesser of two evils.
Exactly.
Essentially, there's two types of leftists. So one is the good cop Mark Carney types, which we were more common in the 90s when I was growing up, those type of leftists. Whereas in recent years, over the last decade, 2 decades, we've had leftists who have resorted to authoritarianism, people like Dan Andrews, Chrystia Freeland, and also in Davos, I mentioned passive-aggressive behavior, like BlackRock, for example. They sent out a woman. You probably didn't pick up on it at the time because you were so caught up in the moment. But when you watch it and play it back, she's saying, "Watch yourself."
Me neither. Thanks for caring so much about me. I feel like BlackRock really cares.
Watch yourself. Watch yourself.
Yeah. I didn't. That's why we played it back and we captioned it, because it's just, I guess, you know, that's how BlackRock is used to winning any kind of engagement, is like a subtle threat. But yeah, it's
mafia tactics. You don't want anything to happen to you or your family. It'll be a real shame.
Yeah, I know. And listen, I just want the audience to know that I do not plan on killing myself anytime soon.
And you also had Richard Quest. He's a prominent CNN anchor. And one of the things that struck me,
I love that guy.
He's a real character. But he did say to Ezra, be careful when you're walking and talking. Be careful.
I think he was having a go at the fact that we were all tripping over. I don't think he was. Look, my problem with him and what he represents is that the media go there. They're invited guests. They do puff pieces. He claimed to do, hard-hitting journalism, some of the most uncomfortable questions to Klaus Schwab. We played those questions. They don't really ask tough questions, especially about the issues that matter. It is always a puff piece, and hence he is invited back with a red carpet every single year.
And when I noticed he got extremely triggered, almost very aggressive in your face when Ezra used the word regime media to describe it.
Yeah.
That really stirred him.
It did stir him. And look, we did see him afterwards a couple of times. And I got to say, for such a character, he's got a very sensitive soul. Like, he was very, very, like, when he's seen it, because we did see him after, and he was just so hurt by it all. And it's just so crazy, these people who portray a certain character, and then they're in the little club, and they get, they prop each other up. The WEF prop him up, as in give him all the access, and he props them up by making them look great. And then when you go, okay, hold on a second, I don't think the guys you're propping up are so great, and by extension, I don't think your journalism is that great in that moment. He just crumbles, and that's what they're all like. And that's why they get so. But not everyone was like that. I'll tell you now. By the time this comes out, I'll probably put it up already. But there was a CNBC guy who literally walked. I'm going by memory now because I've got to film I'm just going to give a bit of context to it. But do you remember last year CNBC where the guy tried to bully?
Yes, I remember.
But you're here as an invited guest and you're an editor for CNBC. Don't you think that's a bit of a conflict of interest?
I'd like you to go away. I haven't agreed to an interview. If you're doorstepping me, like, go away. Seriously, take your mic out.
Don't touch the mic.
Get away from me, brother.
You're meant to be speaking truth to power. Are you here just to take your marching orders? Is that what you're here for?
Do you want to go away?
Not really. I'm here to do what you should be doing.
Yeah? Please take this out of my mouth. I'm going to have you escorted off for security.
You were inside as he walked in, a bit upset. What did you hear him say?
I heard him say, I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't have the exact thing, but he came in sounding quite angry, saying, I'm going to punch him out. Paraphrasing there, he's knocked out, punched out, but, he wanted to hit you.
I don't know, but this guy's going to get punched out.
I just got threatened by the head of news and programming of CNBC. Are you serious?
That's him there.
And for what? For literally doing what he's supposed to do.
Talking to him.
Well, no, I was asking him questions politely. That's his job. And he got so angry that I did what his job's supposed to be. He threatened me. Man, glad you were mic'd up. Well done.
So this year there was two things. There was on CNBC, one of the CNBC guys was crying about that, called us anarchists for that. And then when that guy was the one who was
threatening to assault you.
Yeah,
and then punch your face.
And then this time there was this CNBC guy walk out and he told us how much he loved us, and I was like, wait, what? And
was this the same guy who threatened to punch you?
No. I asked him, where's that guy? This was a reporter, like an anchor, and he goes, I don't know, I really don't know. He's a British guy, so I feel like maybe he doesn't like that guy. But he knew, and he goes, and he was saying he thinks we should be allowed in. We do great work at Rebel News. So not, like I said, not everyone's evil. In any of those institutions, there are. Let the audience judge. I think he was genuine. I think he might also be fired once he's come out. But
it seems like the MO of some of these people is passive aggressive behavior, like watch yourself, and who knows what they say behind closed doors. Maybe what was captured in that recording last year is their standard MO.
Exactly.
Let me go on to the ADL. So this is where you confronted Jonathan Greenblatt, and you called him the boy who cried wolf.
How you doing, Jonathan?
Good.
Can I ask you something?
I'm meeting somebody. I'm sorry.
I'll walk with you. Are you like the boy who cried wolf?
Are you?
Why is he the boy who cried wolf?
Well, what did the boy who cried wolf? What's the analogy? The boy who cried wolf says there's a wolf. Everybody comes. Then by the third time, nobody believes him, which is exactly what he's done with anti-Semitism. And I think that, I know I went into that and I probably got a lot angrier than I should have. Usually I'm able to compose myself, and it was weird that he got really under my skin. I think for years of being censored and condemned and demonized by people like him, especially his organization. When now we find ourselves after October 7, where we can all agree that there's some real anti-Semitism that's come out, both, on the right, on the left, and Islamists from all sides. And I think that he's only ever hurt our community, mine and your community, by doing that, because, for years, like I told him, I think he monetized it. He turned it into a business to find anti-Semitism. And so every single day you condemn people for anti-Semitism, which they're not, they weren't anti-Semites. Or I think I got a bit tunnel vision when I was talking to him, because I think that it's not only anti-Semitism, that, what the ADL do is they go on about hate, they go on about Islamophobia, they go on about transphobia, every phobia, they condemn everybody from all those phobias. And to be fair, I don't think they actually care about most of those other ones. It's just to elevate their anti-Semitism thing, which so they're kind of buying brownie points off the left, going, "Oh, look, I'm on your side. I'm Black Lives Matter, yeah." So coming, and then what happened after October 7 is all those people that he alienated because he was defending, like all our allies that he alienated over the years because he was fighting for these other communities that hate us. He threw our allies under the bus. He threw other Jews. He still throws other Jews under the bus.
I was going to ask you about that.
To defend, to fight for these people that hate Jews as well. Black Lives Matter. You see what they post about Jews since October 7. All these LGBTQ plus the alphabet mob. You see them rallying in for Hamas these days. It makes no sense, but that's what's happened, because they hate Jews more than they care about being thrusted off a building. All his allies, all the people that he fought to defend and was willing to throw either us Jews under the bus for or our allies under the bus for, they've turned against that. So then what it's created is especially on the right, this undercurrent and this ability for real, the extreme or the fringe right, which are anti-Semitic, for them to kind of recruit off that. They were able to go, you see, the Jews are always controlling the narrative. And if you say anything against anyone, because they don't necessarily have to, it could be, and that's what my problem was in that engagement, is that it wasn't just against anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is his final thing. And the thing is, then he used the defense of going after anti-Zionists, Jews that are left-wing anti-Zionists, and says, you see, I do go after the left. And it's like, mate, no, you don't. The only thing you care about more than your wokeism is Israel. And so when a normal conservative looks at that doesn't have, they have no skin in the game when it comes to Israel, the Middle East conflict. So they look at it and they go, this guy who fights for everything woke, and labels everyone everything. And the only time he ever condemns the left is when it's with Israel. It has taken a lot of those people and gone to them, well, F Israel, F the Jews, this is what they do. And the thing is that, you know how many people in Crown Heights message me going, yeah, good on you. He's an arsehole. He does not represent us. And a lot of Jews, like, I'm like conservative. And I think since October 7 as well, a lot of Jews realize their allies are, a lot of Jews that didn't like me before then, we're talking about your left-wing Jews, realize, yeah, all your virtue signaling hasn't protected you at all. And Avi was right, warning you in 2017 that these people are going to come to eat you, whether it's the Islamists or the left. And both of them have come back to call for the annihilation of the people that have fought so hard to defend them. And so I'm no longer enemy number one. Some are still blinded because suddenly the ADL, they're on the forefront of the fight against anti-Semitism, and now there's anti-Semitism. So, and they're on the forefront of it. Hey, how convenient, how amazing! Like, I don't think Jonathan Greenblatt likes anti-Semitism. I think, like most Jews, it hurts. It's an attack on you when it's genuine anti-Semitism. But he's certainly enjoying his role more now than he ever has, because now he's finally relevant because there is actually anti-Semitism. But the fact that he's right now, and he's not completely right now because he's still attacking Jews, but the fact that he's right now on this anti-Semitism doesn't mean, one, he was good for us and he didn't have a hand in it, and doesn't get him off the hook for all of that, and it means like the minute. And to be honest, I think as an advocate, it hurts us more than it helps us. Because, again, like the boy who cries wolf, people go, it's that guy crying anti-Semitism again.
But it's interesting that and you alluded to this before, he's not just defaming people who are not Jewish. He's also going after other Jews, Orthodox Jews as well, including hierarchic. So the Anti-Defamation League is supposed to be officially, the official mission statement is to defend Jews against defamation, but here he is. He's the Anti-Defamation League, defaming other Jews.
Yes, and Chaya is a good Chabad girl.
She's ultra-Orthodox.
She's a Chabadnik.
Yeah.
She's one of the tunnel people. No. Oh, no.
We'll get to that a little later. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because he put her on the ADL put her on a list of hateful people. I can't remember. I'm just paraphrasing. Extremists.
Yeah.
And I think she threatened to sue them for defamation. She took some form of legal action. I think they took her off the list after that.
Yep, immediately off the list.
And do you think it's, because you mentioned monetization, do you think it's just do you think there's just a motive for profit, or is there something else? Is there a political motive to this as well?
I think both. It's also power. Like, the ADL has wielded a lot of power, and humans like to feel powerful, and some humans more than others. So I think he enjoys his role. He enjoys being. That's why he had such an issue with Elon Musk, I believe.
People are on edge, and when Elon Musk is amplifying these people, it's very problematic.
What does that mean?
You're a woke leftist that anybody who opposes your worldview, you label an anti-Semite.
Frankly, it's true. We did call for a pause back in November after the acquisition.
Have you ever called for cancellations of companies' ads on TikTok like you did X?
Asking you.
Apologize to Elon. It's not that hard to say sorry. When you say sorry, you got it wrong.
Because not because of really what Elon Musk was doing, because the proof is in the pudding that TikTok's anti-Semitism is far greater, far worse than anything you saw on Twitter.
That's right.
And the ADL kind of, in comparison, gave it a free pass. Never did the ADL call for advertisers to pull from TikTok. But they did on Twitter.
They had a group of young people praising bin Laden on TikTok.
There is, if you spend any time, I've stopped going on TikTok, but it was just insane the amount of anti-Semitism that you saw on TikTok, and the ADL just didn't care. So, they put out statements to make it look like that. But when you talk about actions that they took, it was always against Twitter. And that has to do with the fact that Twitter was challenging the ADL's control of the narrative, gatekeeping what's, when it comes to misinformation, disinformation, so the gatekeeping the truth. And then on top of that, the one in charge of defining what is hate, and and transphobia is the perfect example for something that Elon Musk was getting behind, where they'll deem someone like Chaya Raichik transphobe over the fact that she says there's two genders, or the fact that she literally just republishes TikToks from crazy alphabet warriors on TikTok.
So again, just for the benefit of our viewers, we're talking about the creator of Libs of TikTok. So Haya Reichik, she is an ultra-Orthodox Jewish woman, as a result of the groundbreaking work that she was doing, and which was noted and praised by Joe Rogan, and got her praise from the President Trump. Ron DeSantis, she was actually threatened, and Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, offered her sanctuary in the governor's mansion. So she was doing a lot of great work, and as a result of that, she was demonized and defamed by the ADL and Jonathan Greenblatt. But I am convinced there's definitely a political motive, because if you look at Greenblatt's background, he is actually used to be a member of the Obama administration. So he's an apparatchik, a yes man of Barack Obama.
Yeah, 100%. Look, when you talk to Jews, especially Orthodox Jews in America, they'll all tell you the same thing. It's an extension of the Democratic Party.
Now, let's go on to a slightly different topic before we wrap up. So you're not the only famous member of your family. There's a lot of your other siblings are quite prominent. One is Manny Waks. He's done a lot of great work advocating on behalf of children and on behalf of human rights, and really made a name for himself in that space. But someone, unfortunately, some so-called influencer, well, he does have a very large following, Dom Lucre, has recently fabricated an entire interview with him for his documentary. Your brother never spoke to this character.
No, so what's happening is Dom, is it Lucre? The breaking of narratives. Look, I think firstly, you got to know the background of that character. It wasn't that long ago that he was part of Black Lives Matter. He was, selling F Trump t-shirts, Black Lives Matter. Like, he was monetizing on the left. He was, he is a well-known grifter, meaning he doesn't, I don't think he believes half the crap that he says. He certainly doesn't. And his so-called documentary is the perfect example of that. And the documentary was 30 minutes long. It was called Tunnels, to investigate the tunnels after the so-called tunnels in 770 in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, New York. And so he said he was going to go to the tunnels and he was going to investigate it because no one other journalists were doing it properly. And those tunnels became a very big talking point, especially for that fringe right that's really blown up and turned anti-Jewish about everything. They were very excited by stained mattresses, which is interesting because if you ever go to hard rubbish pickup and you see mattresses outside, you often see those same sort of stains, which are like sweat stains. But whatever, he went to investigate, and his investigation consisted of him sticking a phone kind of a little bit down the exit point of one of those tunnels, and then he went into subway tunnels, which were full
subway tunnels.
Yeah, fully built up subway tunnels, and took video of a little jacket on the
graffiti
and graffiti. Like, it was the most ridiculous shit you'll ever see. Called it a documentary, but he had 2 points in it that he used to try legitimize his conspiracy theory. And one of them was, firstly, my brother. And my brother's put out a statement, and look, me and my brother have had our differences in the past, certainly quite a public spat, but we're close now. Our political worldviews are very different. But when it came out, I straight away go, what is going on here? And he basically showed me that, and now he's made it public. The messages, had nothing to do with Dom. It was this other girl who messaged him, essentially making it sound like she was doing a report, like a homework kind of thing, for university, like and it was like a dual video. Anyways, they kind of pressured him at the end to just, like, he thought he was just going into a meeting about it, and they go, oh no, let's just do it now, and they filmed it, but Dom wasn't there at all, and Dom's dumb as dog shit, so there was no way he was going to be able to conduct an interview to even get the right questions in there that they could manipulate for this. That's right. And then they put it on a screen to make it look like Dom's the one interviewing my brother. And then they basically cut it up. So he did an hour interview, and at the end they just asked him a question about those tunnels. And my brother's no big fan of Chabad. It's it's no secret. So he had his go at Chabad, but he obviously said he has no, like, and he certainly doesn't subscribe to the conspiracy theory that these guys were using him to try and legitimize. And so there was that. So the travesty of using a child sexual abuse victim and somebody that actually fights for victims of child sexual abuse in the Jewish community, to use him, his story, and his advocacy to legitimize your bullshit fighting for child sexual abuse victims that don't exist in those tunnels. He gave no evidence of anything. And anyone that comes from within that community, like us, if you've ever been to 770, which I've been there a lot, and even when you saw, like, when they welcomed him inside to 770, that group, and that's that group, the ones that were wearing the little Mashiach flags, that's the same group that were doing the tunnels. And the ones that kicked him out were the ones that called the cops to shut it down. But because it's like internal politics there, but even them, they were super nice to him. They were super open, and they were like, dude, this whole conspiracy is like, it's just nuts. And it's for them over a real estate thing. And obviously right now in the current climate, people are going to easily choose to ignore, like, they want to pin something nefarious, even if there's zero evidence. That's
right, because they want to believe it.
Yeah,
it makes a good story.
A stained mattress means that something has happened, even though you've got zero victims, you've got zero actual evidence. Like, hold on, to put into context, these are the same people who, when they grabbed a woman, a young lady, out of the truck in Gaza by the hair, with blood coming out of her,
well, that's just resistance to oppression.
Not even that. They question whether it's even true that she got raped, and they're just like, oh, she just crapped herself because she's a Jew. They're scared. And so they justify it, and then they question whether it's even true, whether, when you have all the evidence and you have all the other evidence surrounding that it happened multiple times on that day to multiple different victims, they deny it. And then here you've got a stained mattress, that every mattress that you ever have that's old often has a stain. That is their evidence to something where there's no victim like the Hamas ones, and there's no actual evidence that it doesn't even look like blood. It looks like sweat. So these are bad faith actors. He's a bad faith actor. But it's good that community notes exist, because I think the internet turned and exposed him for what he is. And I think that hopefully finally people are waking up to this, calamity that he tries to sell off. You don't have to like my style of journalism, but if you accept someone like that, if you watch that, if you fell for any of that, you need to up your critical thinking game.
Sensationalist garbage, that's what it was. I mean, essentially he got a bunch of sound bites. He never spoke to your brother. Obviously your brother spoke to someone else. He did a cut and paste job and got a bunch of sound bites out of it and used it to push his own agenda and false narrative. But let me ask you this. I mean, just for the benefit of our viewers, I mean, I might as well just say it myself. It's in New York's a very densely populated area, and it's quite common for people to have basements and underground tunnels. And
every building has a basement.
Exactly.
Every building, yeah.
Exactly. And you've got a massive subway system there as well, full of tunnels.
And these guys, which, by the way, are known within that community to be a radical element that are very excitable and they're super religious, They're, they they are harmless in that sense, and they were physically digging this extension of a basement to another building because there was no permits being granted. Like it's along those lines. It's a really nothing burger that they're trying to insinuate, and it's fine. You know what? I don't have a problem with investigative journalists going into detail and finding the truth, but bring some freaking evidence. A cut-up interview of a child sexual abuse victim and advocate who denies everything you're saying, but you don't put his denials in it. That's not evidence. And them welcoming you in nicely with open arms, singing and dancing and offering you drinks that's not evidence either.
Anyone who genuinely cares about victims of child sexual abuse will condemn this Dom Lucre character and what he did to your brother.
Absolutely.
And just also for the benefit of our viewers, so there's been a long-running dispute in this synagogue called 770 in the middle of Brooklyn, Crown Heights, between two different factions. And the reason why these students, these seminary students, built these tunnels was, as Avi said, they tried to connect the synagogue to another building. And the leader of that movement, of the Chabad movement, the late leader, his request not long before he passed was he wanted to renovate and extend the synagogue. And they couldn't do that for over 25 years since his passing because there was a dispute within Chabad over who owns that building. So these seminary students, after 25 years of nothing happening, took it upon themselves in their own way of extending and building tunnels. And who called the cops on them? It was people within Chabad who called the police on them. So that just that's another indication that there was nothing untoward actually going on. But look, at the end of the day, it's not for us to convince. If people want to hate and they want to believe in conspiracy theories, it's not for us to convince them. Our job is really just to state the facts of what actually happened there. So from one conspiracy to another one, just before we wrap up, we're almost done. Purgatory.
Boiling point in Melbourne. A man is pinned to the ground by police while two angry groups are separated by the street. The tense scenes began early up the road before the demonstration settled on Princes Park. Organisers of the rally, Free Palestine Melbourne, say this is what prompted their demonstration. CCTV vision appears to show a takeaway store in Caulfield broken into and set alight on Friday morning. Its pro-Palestinian owner and the rally organisers believe this was a hate crime. Police investigating the fire have refuted that claim, saying the attack wasn't politically or racially motivated.
And it's interesting because Purgatory, that incident in Caulfield where there was a false claim made against the local Jewish community, there was also simultaneously another event that happened in Sydney, Where's the Jews? And it's interesting that, supporters, people who harbour anti-Israel, anti-Jewish views use that as an example, the Where's the Jews incident where the New South Wales Police got an audio specialist, despite the fact that there were multiple witnesses there who signed stack decks and affidavits on the threat of being committing perjury. They actually signed these stat decks to say that they heard gas the Jews. But nevertheless, the New South Wales Police hired an audio specialist, and now people that are anti-Israel, because the New South Wales Police is saying, oh, well, it's Where's the Jews, not gas the Jews, are using that as an example of people within the Jewish community, especially the AJA, of pushing a false narrative. So I think it's interesting that those two incidents happened at the same time.
That whole story is nuts. The focus on whether they said gas the Jews. Well, everybody agrees they first said F the Jews, and then it was either Where's the Jews or gas the Jews. There are, like you said, multiple witnesses who say that either in that situation or other parts of that same protest, they heard clearly gas the Jews. But it's just, even the Purgatory owner is using the fact that now the police say it was only Where's the Jews, as if the Jews created, I think his words was to incite Islamophobia. It's like, mate, they still, even, let's go by your version of events where you're trying to minimize it. Please explain F the Jews, where's the Jews by a violent mob that were looking and hunting for Jews. Do you know, in Nazi Germany, when they were looking to round up Jews, do you know what they were, when they kicked in doors, what they said? They didn't say gas the Jews. They said, where's the Jews? They were looking for the Jews before they gassed them.
And it wasn't a friendly overture.
Yeah.
They weren't looking to have a cup of tea with them. And
then Purgatory itself, the blood libel, it wasn't just a false claim. It was a clear blood libel to incite hate against and look, I think there's still more. Watch this space, because I think that there's more to that story that's still going to come out as it unfolds, with clearly the owner refusing to apologize for what he knew at the time to be untrue. Police immediately, declaring it wasn't a hate crime because they had their suspicions. And, the people that have been charged with it have also been charged with the tobacco wars, which a few days earlier, which I think is something that you actually exposed, was only a few days earlier, he was talking about those same fire bombings, which he seems to know so much about. Isn't it odd that a few days later, the same people charged for those tobacco fire bombings were also charged for his one, and they say that they're not working for themselves; they're working. So I think more will come out in that, but
just to be clear, this is in his own words. He said, so in that video, he did a podcast a few days before his store burnt down, and he said, why do, and this is, I mean, this is not taken out of context. People are welcome to listen to it. It's on the Fair Dinkum podcast. That's the name of the podcast. He said, why do Arabs burn each other's shops down?
And that's where we really fail as a people. We failed because we were able to be divided and conquered. And forget the Middle East. Let's talk about Australia. Look at all the people burning each other's shops down. They're all Arabs. The Arabs burning Arab shops down. Why? Why aren't we supporting one another?
That was his words.
And it says it's Arabs against Arabs. And it's known within that community that it is that, and that it's kind of warring groups, criminal elements. So, and then a few days later, his shop burns down, and he changes his narrative to suit his anti-Israel, advocacy, and to somehow turn him into the victim of the Jews. And he knew full well. In fact, we all knew, because this is what I say, that there is no, as soon as it happened, you looked at it as a Jew, as somebody that knows the community very well. I'm thinking, there's not one person I can think of that has the right mix of stupidity, gutsiness, brazenness, and know-how to execute
something like that.
Yeah, to execute such a thing. So it was clearly people that have done it before, which proven they're the ones that are involved in these tobacco fire bombings that he was talking about a couple of days earlier, and it had nothing to do with the Jews, and it was intended in incite. I think he intended it to create, to make it, to elevate him as the victim for whatever purposes around his activism. And he did crowdfund $63,000 to rebuild a business that I'm assuming was insured, or somebody did on his behalf. He didn't tell him not to. And he was like on the front page of everything. ABC kept running his stories, put him on a Q&A because it was his poor victim that had his shop burnt down over his political views, when it turned out exactly what the police were saying, and anyone who knows anything about the community knew was impossible. But he says today that he won't apologize for it, because he apologized for not calling it a hate crime earlier.
I mean, the fact that he didn't, according to reports, The Age, the ABC, and according to Shane Patton, the chief of police, he didn't make a statement to the police a formal statement and that's still the investigation. I mean, that just speaks for itself. He knew from the it's quite apparent that, or at least there's enough evidence to suggest that he knew from the outset that it wasn't a hate crime.
I don't know. I think there was two things going alongside each other. I think the statement that he was refusing and he was stalling the investigations around the hate crime because he was refusing to give the statements around the threats. But yeah, watch his space because I think it's all heading one way, and hopefully it is where he's held accountable.
Final question. We had we had Australia Day recently. We had the so-called Invasion Day protests. I didn't see any Australian flags, but I did see a sea of Palestinian flags. What on earth is going on there?
Look, for all those conservatives that have fallen for the anti-Israel propaganda, remember the people you are siding with don't only hate Israel, they're going to come after Australia, and that is demonstrated every time in all these protests. Think about it. The same reasons they hate Israel is the same reasons that they are going to use against Australia. Apparently, Israel is a colonizer state, which it clearly isn't. If you've ever read the Bible, not as a religious text, books, not as a religious text, just as a historical context. So I don't know how the indigenous people can colonize their own land, but even if you subscribe to that false narrative, then you better be willing to allow Australia to fall as well.
Powerful words and scary, to say the least. Avi Yemini, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Hope to have you back on again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, mate.